They told her to cook for the unit, or something close enough. The young Marine lieutenant, his face taut with the arrogance of newfound authority, gestured dismissively toward the percolator in the corner of the ready room. While we're waiting on the colonel, maybe the contractor can make sure we have coffee. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. In his world, she was furniture, an accessory, a civilian woman in a room crackling with masculine energy and mission focus. A problem to be managed, or better yet, ignored. The air in the advanced training facility was thick with the smell of ozone and disinfectant, a sterile environment for deadly work. Red lights from a dormant combat simulator pulsed softly against the far wall, a sleeping beast. If she remained silent, if she allowed this casual dismissal to stand, the mission they were preparing for would fail before it even began. They just didn't know it yet. A revelation was coming. It would not be loud. It would not be announced. But it would change everything. The only hint of the truth was a sliver of dark ink on her wrist, a secret she wore like a second skin. Anya Petrova carried her presence like a weighted cloak, heavy but perfectly balanced. She had entered the high-security Marine Force reconnaissance base an hour earlier, her civilian attire, practical slacks, and a simple blouse, a stark contrast to the digital camouflage and polished boots surrounding her. She was a ghost at the feast, her name on an access list, but her purpose a mystery to the men who sized her up with quick, dismissive glances. They saw a woman past her prime, her face a neutral mask, her quietness mistaken for timidity. The lieutenant's comment about the coffee hung in the air, unaddressed. The other Marines, younger men eager to prove themselves, smirked or studiously avoided eye contact. They were warriors. She was a line item on a budget, a box to be checked. Anya's gaze didn't waver. It swept the room not with indignation, but with a calm, methodical assessment. She cataloged exits, security camera blind spots, and the subtle hierarchy playing out before her. She was not there for their approval. She was there for the machine. The silence was finally broken by the sharp click of boots on linoleum. Colonel Marcus Thorne entered, a man carved from granite and institutional certainty. He radiated an aura of command that silenced the low chatter instantly. His eyes, honed by decades of service, swept the room and landed on Anya. There was no welcome, only scrutiny. "Report," he said, his voice a low gravel. The platoon captain stepped forward. "Sir, Recon Team Alpha is prepped. We're waiting on the final systems check for the simulator." Thorne's gaze shifted back to Anya. "You're Petrova?" "The technical liaison from Dynatech." She gave a slight nod. "I am." He picked up a tablet, his thumb flicking across the screen. "Your file is thin, Ms. Petrova. It says you're a systems analyst. We have our own tech sergeants for that. Frankly, I don't see why corporate insists on sending field reps for a standard training cycle. This is a closed environment. The implication was clear. You are redundant. You are in the way. My role is to observe and ensure optimal performance of the simulation software," Anya stated, her voice even, betraying no reaction to his condescension. "Optimal performance," Thorne repeated, a humorless smile touching his lips. "Our Marines know how to perform. Just make sure your machine does." He turned away, dismissing her as thoroughly as his lieutenant had. The institutional arrogance was a wall, solid and impenetrable. Anya remained silent, her expression unchanged, as she was relegated to a folding chair in the corner, an observer in a room that refused to see her. The Marines filed into the simulator control room, a cavernous space dominated by a wraparound screen that formed a 360-degree dome. Inside that dome, a faithful replica of a hostile city block awaited them. It was the military's most advanced toy, a multi-million-dollar crucible designed to forge skill under fire. While the tech sergeants and the colonel gathered around the primary command console, Anya found a small, secondary terminal tucked away near a humming server rack. She sat, her posture economical, her focus absolute. Her eyes weren't on the main screen where the platoon was beginning its virtual insertion, but on the raw data scrolling down her small monitor. It was the system's lifeblood, a river of code and diagnostic readouts that the operators only glanced at when something went wrong. She saw, immediately, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the power distribution metrics. A nanosecond flicker in the data transfer rate between the core processor and the kinetic feedback modules. It was nothing, a ghost in the machine. To the sergeants, it would be a rounding error. To Anya, it was the first twitch of a dying nerve. Her hand rested on the console, her fingers hovering over the keys. Her sleeve rode up just enough to reveal the tattoo on the inside of her wrist. It was a wolf's head, rendered in stark, black, geometric lines. It was not a flourish of youthful rebellion. It was a symbol, a key to a door they didn't know existed. She watched the numbers, and she waited. The simulation began. On the main screen, the Marines moved with practiced efficiency through dusty, virtual streets. Team Alpha, moving to objective, the captain's voice, filtered through the comms, was calm. Colonel Thorne watched, arms crossed, a stern sentinel guarding the sanctity of the exercise. For 3 minutes, everything was perfect. Then the ghost in the machine awoke. The first sign was a burst of static in their headsets. "Comms are spotty," the captain reported. Then, the heads-up displays inside their helmets flickered. Green data turned to garbled red text before vanishing completely. "Lost my HUD," a Marine shouted. On the control room screens, the image inside the dome began to tear and stutter. A high-pitched alarm began to shriek through the room. "What is it, Sergeant?" Thorne barked. The lead tech sergeant, a man with 20 years of experience, typed furiously. "I don't know, sir. We have a cascade failure. The core is non-responsive. I'm locked out." Red lights flashed across every console. The main screen went black, replaced by a single, ominous error code. The simulator was dead. Panic, controlled but sharp, began to ripple through the technicians. The mission was scrubbed. The training schedule was in ruins. The colonel's face was a mask of cold fury, directed at the technology that had betrayed him. In the rising tide of chaos, one person moved with serene purpose. Anya Petrova stood up from her forgotten corner. She didn't speak. She didn't ask for permission. She walked past the frantic tech sergeants, past the furious colonel, and stopped at an unmarked maintenance panel low on the wall, a panel no one had touched in years. Her fingers found a nearly invisible seam. She opened it, revealing a tangle of fiber optic cables and a small, dusty interface port. Her movements were a blur of efficiency, a dance of pure function. She pulled a compact tool from her pocket, rerouted 2 cables with a decisive click, and plugged a small device into the port. A command line interface, stark green text on a black background, appeared on her small terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing a string of code that was not in any manual. It was a language the machine understood in its bones. The piercing alarm cut off. A deep hum replaced it. One by one, the red lights on the consoles blinked off, turning to a steady, healthy green. The main screen flickered to life, not with the simulation, but with a system diagnostic showing all functions stable. The catastrophic failure was gone. In its place was a silence, so profound it felt louder than the alarm had been. Every eye in the room was now fixed on her. The lead tech sergeant stared, dumbfounded, at his monitor. He looked at the code she had entered, a screenshot of which now sat on her screen. "That override," he stammered, his voice filled with disbelief. "That's a legacy command from the prototype phase. It's a hardware-level bypass. It's not supposed to be accessible." He looked at her as if she were a magician. Colonel Thorne strode over, his boots making heavy, deliberate sounds in the silent room. He stood before her, his anger replaced by a deep, unsettling curiosity. For the first time, he looked at her not as a contractor, but as a puzzle. "Who?" he said, his voice low and devoid of its earlier condescension. "Are you?" Anya met his gaze, her own expression unreadable. "I'm the technical specialist," she replied, her voice as calm as it had been when he dismissed her. As she withdrew her hand, her sleeve caught, pulling back to fully reveal the tattoo. The black wolf's head, stark and predatory. The young lieutenant who had joked about the coffee stared at it, his face paling. An old gunnery sergeant standing near the back squinted, a flicker of distant, battlefield recognition in his eyes. He whispered a single word, a name from old war stories and classified after-action reports. A ghost story. Folk. The following morning, the atmosphere had changed. The casual disdain was gone, replaced by a mixture of awe and wary respect. The Marines gave her a wide berth, whispering among themselves. Anya was summoned not to the simulator, but to the colonel's private office. The mission briefing on his screen was not a simulation. It was real-time intelligence for an imminent operation. The simulator failure was a blessing in disguise, Ms. Petrova. Thorne began, his tone formal, respectful. It replicated almost perfectly the electronic warfare conditions we expect to face in the Aridam Basin. He gestured to a satellite map dotted with hostile markers. Our target is here, protected by a multi-layered signal jamming and network intrusion system. The same kind that crashed our rig. He looked her directly in the eye, the question implicit. He wasn't asking for an opinion. He was consulting an oracle. We need a way in, he stated. Quietly, Anya stepped closer to the screen. She didn't speak for a full minute, her eyes absorbing every detail: topography, signal strength projections, power grid schematics. Then, she pointed a single, steady finger at the screen. Your infiltration plan is sound, she said, but your entry point is wrong. You're attacking the network where it's strongest. She traced a new route on the map, a path through a forgotten civilian communications hub. Here, there's a blind spot, a legacy fiber optic line. They use it for redundant systems, but they don't shield it properly. You can't break their network from the outside. But from here, she tapped the screen decisively. You can get inside it. Her analysis was not a suggestion. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the chilling certainty of someone who had done it before. Colonel Thorne listened, his expression hardening with resolve. Her plan was audacious, brilliant, and ran counter to every doctrine he had ever learned. It required a level of technical infiltration that was more science fiction than military strategy. He needed to be sure. After dismissing her, he secured his office and made a call on a secure satellite line to a number he hadn't used in 5 years. The man who answered the other end was a 3-star general at Joint Special Operations Command. Thorne didn't waste time with pleasantries. Sir, I need to verify a civilian contractor's file. Name is Petrova, Anya. I have a file number. He read it out. A long silence stretched across the line. Thorne could hear the faint click of a keyboard. Then the general's voice came back, strained and cautious. Colonel, you do not have the clearance to access that file. No one at your pay grade does. Thorne waited. But the general continued, his voice dropping lower. Since you're asking, I'll tell you what I can. About 10 years back, in the Asmar province, we had an entire enemy command and control network go dark overnight. No explosion, no strike. It just stopped. An investigation found that someone had walked into their most secure facility, bypassed every security measure, and surgically dismantled their digital infrastructure from the inside. They were never caught. They were never even seen. The only trace they left was a call sign in the ghost data. Voke. It means wolf. The official record says that operative retired from active service. It appears the general paused. The record was mistaken. That file belongs to her. Thorne slowly placed the receiver back in its cradle, the quiet click echoing in the room. He stared at the wall, seeing not plaster, but the face of the quiet woman who had fixed his simulator. He walked out his office and back into the main briefing room. The entire reconnaissance team was there, going over the new infiltration plan Anya had laid out. She stood off to the side, near the same secondary terminal as before, observing. She was a still point in a room of control motion. Thorne didn't hesitate. He walked past his platoon captain, past the tech sergeants, and stopped directly in front of her. The room fell into a sudden, expectant hush. Every conversation ceased. Every head turned. Colonel Marcus Thorne, a man who had not stood at attention for another officer in a decade, squared his shoulders, brought his heels together, and raised his hand to his brow in a slow, formal salute. It was a gesture of profound, unconditional respect. For a heartbeat, The room was frozen. Then, the platoon captain, seeing his commander's action, snapped to attention and saluted. The young lieutenant, his face a mask of shame and awe, did the same. Across the room, one by one, every Marine rose to their feet and rendered a sharp, silent salute to the quiet civilian woman in their midst. Anya Petrova looked at the sea of men honoring her. A flicker of warmth, of acknowledgement, finally entered her eyes. She did not speak. She simply gave them a single, sharp nod. The mission in the Aridan Basin was a flawless success. They moved through the electronic blind spot she had identified, dismantling the enemy's network from the inside, just as she had described. Anya was not there. When they returned to the base, she was gone. Her name was removed from the access list, her presence erased as cleanly as a line of code. Weeks turned into months. The memory of the quiet contractor began to feel like a dream, a strange chapter in the unit's history. One afternoon, the young lieutenant, now more seasoned, was running diagnostics on the combat simulator. He noticed the small maintenance panel she had used was still not perfectly flush with the wall. He ran his fingers over the seam, a silent reminder of the force of nature that had passed through their lives. He thought of the black wolf tattoo and the whispered name, Voke. He finally understood. Some warriors didn't need uniforms or ranks. Their battlefield was different, their victories silent. He looked up at the main screen, where the system diagnostics hummed along perfectly, a constant, steady green. Deep within the machine's core programming, her legacy remained, a ghost of elegant, invisible code holding it all together. It was a silent strength that had come when needed, fixed what was fundamentally broken, and then vanished back into the shadows from which it came.